Good evening. Welcome to our show. It's time to come out and play. John Clauser, Johnny Metal, the Metal Dad, coming to you from my music corner of the world. My faithful co-captain, John the Music Nut. How you doing, my friend?
I'm well. How about you?
Ooh, okay. We're just gonna come right out it and we're just gonna get right into it. So come out and play. Yes, even with this lovely little pop-up thing, which Dee would attribute to Alice Cooper and so many other people that were probably doing this kind of stuff back in the day. So, November 22nd, 1985 is when this bad boy hits. Recorded at the Hit Factory in New York and placed in Los Angeles, which is escaping my memory at the moment. Hang on a second. No, never mind. I'm not going to be able to find it. Too small of a print. Anyway, also done in Los Angeles, where D tends has some stories about that as well. Um, Chart action. This is compared to what Stay Hungry would do. This is a little more disappointing. Down in Peter Kerr's neck of the woods on the Kent Music Report, number 56. Up in Metal Roger and Mike Ladano's neck of the woods and Martin Popoff's neck of the woods, number 36. The Finnish album charts. This actually did well in Finland, went to number 4. Over in my buddy Paul in Ovi Rendum's neck of the woods in Norway, this hit number 11, so it did well there. Swedish charts went to number 10. The UK charts only gets to number 95. And they
Mm.
had their big kind of jump in the UK, and now they're not quite the darling. But the US Billboard 200, 53. So yeah, lot lower here. Certifications does go gold in Finland, which is 25,000 units. Sweden goes gold as well with 50,000 units. Eventually does go gold in the United States, but that's about as far as it goes. And what were those numbers for Stay Hungry by chance? Do you happen to remember? Three time
Right.
platinum. Ooh, did do a couple of singles. Of course, their big club thing that they used to do, which was the Shangri-La's Leader of the Pack, which was the first video to come out in November of 1985. They did a single for "You Got What We Want" in February of '86, and
You
then
want what we got?
"You Want What We Got." Sorry, uh, and then of course in 1986, only in Europe this was a single, but the other video that they made for this, which was "Be Cruel to Your School." Hmm. In Martin Popoff's book, he only gives us about a 4 out of 10. All music, maybe 3 out of 5. But what do we think about Come Out and Play? John the Music Nut, take it away, my friend.
Thank you, John.
Mm-hmm.
D, AJ, Mark, Eddie, JJ. Still got the classic lineup. We got Dieter Dirks producing. You best know Dieter Dirks for the wonderful work he did with Scorpions. From those great albums, they only did well in Japan, In Trance, Virgin Killer, Taken by Force, through their US breakthrough with Blackout, Love at First Sting, Savage Amusement, he did as well. He also did Black and Blues debut, and he also did Accept's sixth album, Metal Hearts.
Yeah.
Yes, he did. He also did an album by the Plasmatics. I like them. Never, I'm not as familiar with the album for me to talk
Yeah.
about it, as I should say. His production here is spotty. It's either raw or it's over the top, stayed in the 80s production. How's the album? This album is, I compare this album to when you have this one successful sitcom and they ran out of ideas. So they're repeating storylines, they're bringing in guest stars, and it's because they know it's a sinking ship. So they're trying anything they do to keep that momentum. What happened here with Twisted Sister, in my humble opinion, and a few other bands of this era, their record company got too involved. D didn't have enough time to write great material because they were on tour through March of 86. They took a little break and then they want that new album. I'm sorry, March of 85. They want this album out for the Christmas shopping season in 85. We got a strike while the iron's hot. They didn't have a D in particular, did not have enough time to write a killer album. Furthermore, some of these stodgy decisions by producers, record company, whatever, you got, let's try to be more, well, first of all, it's, as I was saying to John off air, schizophrenic. Because part of it's they're trying to be heavy, get back to being heavy again, although they were pretty heavy on Stay Hungry. And while at the same time, they're trying to be accessible. They're trying to write more anthems. But what happens here is how the songs are recorded, it's like a mishmash. Because sometimes it's very heavy gated drums, sometimes throwing a lot of things at the wall to see what they stick, and sometimes it's just raw. Dieter didn't do a good job recording this, in my opinion. And otherwise, it's a fine producer. But it's the songs that matter. So here we go. The opening track with that slow intro there, replicated from the Warriors movie. The Luther character, Warriors come out to play, which I didn't know until about 15 years after this album came out when my brother introduced me to the Warriors movie. This song is killer. My opinion, their best opener. The opener is fantastic. Dee's best vocal performance. When he goes into that next range after the solo and that next chorus, which starts with "Join our cavalcade, enter the world we made," I can't try to replicate that because he goes into another range. Magnificent, heavy. You got the alternating of the solos here. AJ's playing his ass off. Kick-ass track. Great opening to go into it before D goes into that big scream. Relentless, heavy, pre-chorus, fantastic. Excellent track. You're listening to that first track and you're like, okay, they're fine. They're still hungry. And then you get to Leader of the Pack.
Record scratch, insert record scratch.
Yes. This reeks of, well, we don't really have strong singles on here. We got to go with the cover. What do you guys, well, we used to do Leader of the Pack by the Shangri-Las and the Clubs. Well, let's go with that. And maybe it went well in the clubs. I never saw them live. D sounds great. When in the intro, when D sings that opening line, sounds great. Then the band come in and it is just bad. The gang vocals sound shitty here. Let's be honest. I don't like the way it's recorded. I don't like the vocal bridge, what they tried to do, as the Shangri-Las did. It comes off, it doesn't come off right. You got those motorcycle sounds in there trying to replicate the original. Poor choice for a single. It sounds forced, like as though Dieter forced them to do this song You're going to play this. And they don't want to do it. The performance isn't there. They're just going right through it. Not a good choice for a single. They should have kept this in the clubs. You Want What We Got was a single. This sounds more like it. It's more of an anthem. They're trying to get that thing that they got. Well, we're not going to take it. The gang vocals are okay here. The bridge sucks. You want it. We got it. You want it. You don't. No. Doesn't work. It ruins the song. I used to like this song. Now I'm listening to this album again. I'm like, why did I like it? Oh, because it starts out good. And the chorus is okay. It's simple, but it's catchy. Bridge kills it. I Believe in Rock and Roll. Opening's cool. They're trying to get back to the early albums, get back to that heavy metal feel. Has a very good pre-chorus. The call and response during that pre-chorus is very good. Chorus is simple. The spoken word portion afterwards is okay. It's okay. It's like it doesn't touch what they did in the first three albums, though. Let's be honest. Fire Still Burns. One of the few songs on here is really, really good. This has that menace and the fire of the opening tracks. AJ's drumming on here is excellent. The riff is very Iron Maiden-like. This is heavy. This works. You could finally hear Mark Mendoza.
Yeah, that's true.
The solos on here are good. They do say the fire still burns a lot during this song, but what's that? Killer track.
It's funny you say that. So I'm looking at the lyric sheet, and at the end of the song, it says repeat chorus a lot. It really says that in here.
Because the chorus is just the fire still burns.
Yeah.
That's it. Having said that, we go to the abomination that is Be Cruel to Your School, which is ugh. Well, here's where we bring in all the guest stars. Let's get Billy Joel to play the piano. Let's get Clarence Clemens to play the sax. That guitar solo, that sounds like Brian Setzer. Oh, they're both from New York. Oh, Billy Joel's from New York. Clarence Clemens from New Jersey. Okay, let's bring in all these guests. Let's get Alice Cooper. Now, here's something to keep in mind. At this time in 1985, Alice Cooper was considered a relic. On Constrictor in 86, that was considered a comeback album. But in 85, he was considered a thing of the past, which is hard to believe considering his legendary status now, and still a great live performer.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's made a lot of really strong albums since then. Maybe not as good as some of those 70s albums, but a lot of good, solid stuff. This is bad. Boogie woogie piano, rockabilly guitar, gated ass drums. The sax come in, it screams 85. It sounds like something that should have been on the wrestling album by the WWF that came out in 1985. That's what I'm thinking. I'm waiting for Mean Gene to come in here and sing Tutti Frutti.
Oh, gosh. Wow.
Not good.
No.
Complete with key change at the end. Holy 1985.
Yep.
Sounds forced. Lyrics are juvenile. Alice sounds like Alice. Again, Dee's vocals on here are very strong. Dee's a great singer. He didn't have enough time to write great songs, although there's a few. They played this as an encore on this tour? Ooh. I don't know. I Believe in You. Power ballad. Dee can sing these very well. this is okay. I don't think the chorus works. I don't think the call and response on the chorus works. But you got Mark playing a fretless bass, which I find interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Lyrical solo on here. A lot of solos on here are heavier, just to let you know. They're not as lyrical as they were before. I don't think this song quite works as a ballad, but there is a ballad on here. I think it works pretty well later. Oh, power ballad, I should say. Out on the streets, you got that glossy production and holy gated drums, Batman. This is a mid tempo metal track. It doesn't really do anything. It's okay.
Yeah.
Looking out for number one, another attempt at a big anthem. We're looking out for number one, number one. You know, just like they do on You Want What We Got. After the solo, they just have the drums and then repeating the chorus, just like on We're Not Going to Take It. They try that trick again. Pre-chorus isn't strong. It's not that good. Not by Twisted Sister standards. Kill or Be Killed. Kills. Favorite track, next to come out and play. Love this. Raging. Wicked heavy metal, as I said so many times on the first three albums. This is everything about this is great. This would fit right in on Under the Blade like a glove.
Uh-huh.
This was the final track on the LP. The cassette and the CD ended with the strong power ballad called King of the Fools, which Dee sings the hell out of. This is very good. This should have been, I think this is a good spot to put it. On the vinyl, probably wouldn't have fit back then. That's the thing. It was probably just too long. I think this album ends strong with those last two tracks, but there's a lot of mediocrity in between, a lot of stuff that should stay in 1985. I mean, they didn't have enough time. They put this out right around Thanksgiving 85. I think they were rushed. It should have came out in March 86. I know that's almost 2 years in between albums, which was a long time back then. But it would have gave Dee and the band more time to work on these songs, get them tighter, have different songs in there perhaps. I give this a 5.5.
Yeah. That's about where I was heading with my ranking with this is probably actually a 5, maybe. I don't even know if I would go 5.5, but
I'm sorry, John, interrupt. Let's put
yeah,
it this way.
yeah.
I'm thinking about this as I'm listening to it. And I gave Ram It Down a 6, and I said a few great songs and a lot of stuff that isn't good at all. And then I'm thinking to myself, what do you like better? Ram It Down or this? And I go Ram It Down because, I don't like Johnny Be Good, okay? But there's some songs that are okay, but there's some songs on here you're like, wow, what happened?
Yep.
They just, this reeks of not having enough time in the studio.
Yeah.
They didn't have enough time because they were toured, they were physically and mentally drained. I do not blame Dee Snider. Because up until then, Dee wrote killer songs. The band had great performances. The performances here sometimes are strong, sometimes you can tell they're forced.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying anything about musicianship again. I mean, I think these guys are solid musicians. I always thought AJ Pirro was a killer drummer. But at the end of the day, it's the songs and the production.
Yeah.
Haphazard.
Yep. And I think Dee would agree with you about the production. When I was reading through his book, he was like, when he heard the final stuff, like when he would hear it on the radio, as much as he loves Dieter, he was like, yeah, wrong guy for the job.
Right.
It's interesting because and we'll talk more about this later on in this little series after Love Is for Suckers when we're going to kind of do another kind of special thing. But there was another interesting choice that they wanted to get as a producer for this album, Bob Ezrin.
Wow.
And Bob said no.
Well,
So, but we'll
I can
get,
see that.
yeah, and we'll certainly get into that in that once we get to that. But you know, for me, as big a Twisted Sister fan as I was in '85, coming off of Stay Hungry and then discovering Under the Blade and You Can't Stop Rock and Roll, what killed me from wanting to buy this album when it came out was Leader of the Pack. I saw that video and I'm like, what? Mm-mm. I didn't get it then. Had no interest in it. And then I heard this other thing about Be Cruel to Your School, which I'll get more into. But again, it was like, what's Brian Setzer playing on a Twisted Sister song? What's Billy Jones saxophone? Nope. I had moved on to so many other, like Wasp and Metallica, Slayer, and I was moving on to stuff like that at that point. So this one, in all seriousness, folks, and I kid you not, the first time I think I heard this album in its entirety was probably within the last couple of months or so. I
Wow.
I never owned this before. Um, I just never owned this at all, and I never listened to it. So, but I wanted to have something for the once we did this series. But I was like, I really need to just listen to these albums. It's again with 2024 ears and say, okay, would 1985 me have liked these? No. I stand by what I said. Um, maybe come out and play that with that creepy, silly intro of the Twisted Sister, come out and play. Okay, that was a little cheesy, but I mean, what do you expect from D? Okay, you saw the I want to rock and we're not gonna take it videos. What else do you expect? I mean, come on. Okay, so they couldn't get the guy to do that actor because they tried to get him.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they tried to get him to do something with that. He's like,
Mhm.
no, I didn't want to be I don't want to be typecast and doing stuff like that. He's like, you did
Okay.
too many movies like that. What do you mean being
Mhm.
typecast? No, he said no, so that's okay. Um, you got those weird 80s synths in the song, which makes it sound like a bad B horror movie kind of thing with those, with those the way it came in. And you had that nice slow intro, which I guess it sets the mood for if it takes the homage to that movie. But then the song just kicks into overdrive. I'm like, oh, okay. I would have dug this song in '85. I admit that. Great. I thought it was a good track. Um, again, all that dated '80s stuff, like I've already mentioned, you go into that futuristic world. So yeah, very much an homage to the Warriors. You got some good JJ solos going on here. So that's I thought a good opening track. I liked it. I very much appreciated that. Um, I think I'm still a little more of a fan of Stay Hungry or What You Don't Know Sure Can Hurt You as a better opener for me personally, but it is still it's a strong opener, and Dee gives a great vocal performance. I do appreciate that. I think it's a good stuff. Um, yeah, Leader of the Pack. Why? Just because it worked in the club doesn't mean you had to inflict this on the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Um, and I even watched the video before, and I haven't seen that video in probably 35 years. And it was just, I mean, it just looks again. If you thought we're not going to take it and I want to rock videos were cartoonish, well, this one was really cartoonish. I mean, how in the world did that girl survive that horrific crash? Really? Uh, and they don't, and you don't even see them playing in the video. That's also kind of an interesting
That's
thing too.
true.
There, you don't see them playing in the band. They're just doing the motorcycle thing. So again, maybe live in the clubs it worked great, but it just doesn't work here, and it just sounds neutered. It just doesn't have anything to it. Not one of the better tracks. Um, you want what we got. I think this is a little bit of a poke at a lot of the folks that were starting up the PMRC at the time, where, by the time this album had come out, I think D had already recorded it, so he hadn't done the speech to at Capitol Hill yet at this point. That
Okay.
was in September of '85, I think, if I
Oh.
get my dates correct. So they had pretty much already recorded the album by this point. Um, one of these songs about the, like, maybe jealousy, false pretenses, all those kind of fun things. It's a little bit catchy, but you're right, that bridge, and I feel like I've heard it somewhere before. The way the chords played, I feel like I've heard that a thousand times already.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like something one of the LA bands could have done. Um, okay, you get another JJ solo. So, you got JJ's coming to the forefront, where Eddie was the bigger forefront, I think, on Stay Hungry. I believe in rock and roll, another little anthem celebrating the power of rock with all its little, you know, kind of parodies of the Pledge of Allegiance and wedding vows and all those kind of
Yeah,
silly things. You get some good, tasty Eddie solos. The first of two songs with "I Believe" in the song title.
that's true.
Hmm. I don't know if that's always a good thing or not, but not a bad song. It's got some energy. Again, it's a catchy enough chorus. It does get kind of earwormed in your head. Not a bad song, but yeah. Um, Fire Still Burns. For me, the first great song, and I had all caps, great song. Love the trade-off leads with AJ and with AJ, JJ and Eddie here. Love that kind of like Nawaba Maiden like riff. Great vocal performance on from D.
Hmm.
One of the only songs from this album that they would revisit on later reunion shows. I don't think they play much of anything from this album on those reunion shows, and with good reason. To me this is I think it's a barn burner to end the side. But then, just as you think you're so excited to turn that album over, you get "Be Cruel to Your School." You thought it sounded like you thought you were waiting for Mean Gene to come out.
Yeah.
So, here's my thoughts about it. I felt like this was a reject from either Grease or Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Rocky Horror, I could see. Yeah.
uh, I don't know. You get this 50s, 60s kind of throwback, poking fun at the education system. I didn't think about Alice Cooper that was before Constrictor came out.
Yeah,
I didn't,
Constrictor
I,
came out in August 86.
yeah, I didn't think about that. So that was a surprise to me. I just like, yeah, there's a long time between.
Ta-da.
Dada. Yeah, I knew it was one of those. It was either Zipper Catch a Skin, Dada, or Special Forces. I can't remember the order for that, but yeah, there was a long break in there. I didn't
Yeah,
think
3 years.
about that. Didn't think about that. And you got all the guest stars. You got one of the forefathers of heavy metal on piano. That's what that's what D calls him anyway. Because before Billy Joel went solo, he had this little two band guy, but it was actually kind of heavy from what I've.
Attila. Yeah.
Yeah, Attila was kind of heavy for what I understand. I've never actually listened to it, but anyway, yeah. And then Clarence Clemens on sax. You get the Tower of Power, I believe, on the other horns.
I think it's the Uptown Horns.
Uptown horns. Hold on, let me.
Yeah. It's not Tower of
Uh,
Power.
let's see. Let's see. Because yeah, Uptown horns. You're right. My bad.
Okay.
Uptown horns. So you get that. you get Brian Setzer, which I guess just for the style of the song fits perfectly. Who knew he was a friend of Twisted Sister? I didn't. I had
Well,
no.
New York.
In New York, yeah, the whole New York UK thing. But again, and I watched the video, and MTV didn't want to use it because they thought, oh, it's too grotesque. Really? You guys played the heck out of Thriller. What's
Yeah.
and I watched it again. I'm like, it's not even gory. Not like in scenes in Thriller where you get the blood's coming out of people's mouths and all these other things. It wasn't even that gory. And yet, but I'm kind of glad because yeah, it really does not. I believe in you. I'll just move on from Be Cruel to Your Skull. Go on to Be I Believe in You. Yeah, if they were trying to do the Price Part 2, they failed miserably.
Yeah.
Not a bad message in the song. It's just something just and Eddie's got some good solos here, but something just doesn't, I don't know, something just doesn't work with me with this. Again, good vocal delivery from D. He soars on it, but there's just something about the song just doesn't hit it. Um Out on the streets, I with that opening intro, I kind of felt like I've heard that before, and I'm like, oh yeah, that would be. I think we'd hear this a couple years later with "Beds Are Burning," Midnight
Yeah.
Oil.
Yep.
That's kind of what it reminded me of, but I think "Beds Are Burning" was 2 years later. I don't think it
That would have been
predated
80,
this.
yeah, 87 or wait,
Yeah,
87 or 8. I think it was 87 or 88.
something like that. It was Peter Kerr. You could correct us in the comments. Um, Again, I think not a bad song about maybe kind of like maybe homelessness or just trying to walk through a lot of different things in life that are coming out and you just don't know where life's going, but uh, it just doesn't sound like a Twisted Sister song. Again, I feel like this was another song that could have done if an LA band did this song, it would have worked great.
Mhm.
I think D had some good again, D has some good vocals with it, but it's got a moody atmosphere, but it just doesn't sound Twisted Sister to me. I don't know. Looking out for number one. Um, Again, another song. Just if Rat or Motley Crue or somebody had done this song, I think it would have worked perfectly. It just doesn't sound right coming from D. Although he does have a decent vocal again. JJ does the solos here. Um, I think at this point, D's starting to kind of write for himself because he's realizing he's going to have to start looking out for number one with all the rock star stuff coming out at him and what
Mhm.
would come later with all the Capitol Hill stuff. Um, Again, just not nothing overly memorable. Could have interplaced it with any LA band. I'm going to stop at Kill or Be Killed because obviously I was going with the vinyl version. Although I have heard the bonus track, the King of the Fools, King of the
Yes.
King of the Fools. Um, Kill or Be Killed, great track, great ending, great ending. JJ solos. Um, I feel like I could have heard some of the stuff off of like Under the Blade
Yep.
or even You Can't Stop Rock and Roll. There's some vocal lines that I felt seemed a little recycled, but it still was a good song. A good ending track. Um, to me, the only thing I'll say about King of the Fools is I think it just goes on a little too long.
Yes.
And Twisted Sister's not known to be an epic metal band. So a 6.5 minute song is not their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad song, but I can see why they probably left it off the album. But yeah, yeah, I love you, D. I really do. Those first three albums are gold to me. They were parts of my childhood, but this one, no, no, no. It just was. It was a sign of the times for 1985, unfortunately, because so many bands, a lot of bands were kind of going down this commercial rabbit hole. You and I talked a little bit about this off air. I don't know if you want to expound on that a little bit.
Okay, thanks, John. Yes, when Tim Derling and I did our Y&T series on Tim's channel, Tim's Vinyl Confessions. And by the way, if you're a Y&T fan, check out Tim Derling's Y&T album review book. It is excellent, and I'm not just saying it because I'm in it. It is an excellent book,
Yes, it
and
is.
Tim did an outstanding job with it. He called this he called Down for the Count from 1985 a schizophrenic album. And I was like, yeah, that says it perfectly. Because when you listen to that album, it doesn't sound like the same band, except for Dave's unmistakable great vocals. Because for 4 albums before that, they gave us one knockout heavy metal, hard rock. They were more hard rock, very well crafted hard rock album after another. And they were on the cusp of breaking through, and they give us Down for the Count. And that was a rushed album where they didn't have enough time to get, because they did a long tour for In Rock We Trust and put out a live album right before that with Open Fire. They didn't have enough time to write great songs. I don't blame Y&T. I blame A&M. Okay, well, we got to put a cover song on here. Your single's going to be something that Van Stevenson wrote. We're going to gloss it up with keyboards. We're going to doll you up too, which another thing about Twisted Sister, if you thought they were really dolled up on the Stay Hungry tour and those videos, check out Come Out and Play. They were even more dolled up. But getting back, the album wasn't who they were. It was the record company getting more involved and not knowing what the heck they were doing. And it wasn't them. And I thought it stopped their momentum in its tracks. And then they made some very strong albums after, but that hurt their momentum. Another thing about 85, we also got Saxon, great British heavy metal band going LA hard rock, glam metal, if you will. On Innocence is No Excuse. A lot of people like that album, but to me, that wasn't Saxon. I mean, that was more LA. I mean, there's a few good songs on it, but if you compare that to everything they did, I mean, I would even take that debut where they were trying to find their sound even over Innocence is No Excuse. A lot of people wouldn't, but I would. You heard that when Innocence is No Excuse. Like a lot of bands, Dio, Sacred Heart, all of a sudden, now different kind of band, but you got two great albums coming off that. Oh, we got to go a little more commercial here. Oh, let's add these clunky keyboards to Hungry for Heaven. And the song, it sounded rushed. Like Ronnie didn't have enough time to write a killer selection of songs like he did on the first 2 albums. There's, good stuff on there. One of your favorite albums, one of your favorite bands, John, Raven. Stay Hard. Now, Stay Hard had some good songs,
Mhm.
but it wasn't who they were before. It was more glossed up. Pack Is Back was even more glossed up. So 85, I think, was an interesting year because you had some great pop music coming out. You had thrash boiling under there, about to take over.
Mhm.
You had Hell Awaits, which was great. You had Spreading the Disease, which was great, from Slayer and Anthrax, respectively. Excuse me. You had Megadeth, Killing Is My Business, and Business Is Good, their debut. That was very good. So they were about to take over. And meanwhile, a lot of bands in 85, Motley Crue, Theater of Pain.
Mhm.
Well, the songs aren't quite as strong on here. They're dealing with substance issues. Let's put a cover out. This cover song by Brownsville Station as the first single.
Yeah.
And let's put on these songs sound incomplete. We'll just repeat the chorus over and over and over again. That was 1985 in hard rock.
Yeah.
There was a lot of there was some strong albums in 85, but a lot of them, they were going through this phase where they were trying to break through, and the record company saying, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. Didn't really work. So, and I think this is maybe exhibit A, because this band was on fire. They were building and building. And maybe they wouldn't have had a 3 million seller again. But you could have put something out where the songs were still strong. Maybe you wouldn't have had a top 40 hit again. Okay. But something to keep that momentum together, like Invasion of Your Privacy did with Out of the Cellar. It wasn't as big an album. It didn't have to knock out hit single. Lay It Down only hit number 40.
Right.
Round and Round hit number 12. You still hear it all the time. But the rest of the album was, I mean, the album was very strong, very well constructed. Those songs are killer. It's a heavier album. It's not Out of the Cellar, but it's pretty damn close.
Yeah.
This was a drop off, man. Drop off. And I blame Atlantic.
Well, let me throw this out. So D also thinks he didn't have the right inspiration. Because
What, that he didn't have the hunger anymore because he made it?
yeah,
Okay.
that's I think that's something he suggests. It's like,
Possibly, yeah.
where's my hungry inspiration here?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, uh, yeah, but you're still a songwriter, dude. You could still come up with something something a little
Yeah.
bit more stronger, that and I don't think he wrote like a lot of songs. I think he wrote just enough for the album, and that's as far as they went.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that was another thing I think I read. It was like, he didn't bring in an influx of songs. So, because I think the story he tells is when he was in the studio for You Can't Stop Rock and Roll, Mark was with the engineer and the producer doing all the studio stuff. And D would be off maybe starting to put stuff together for the next album. D couldn't do that with Stay Hungry because Tom Werman didn't want anything to do with Mark. Those two couldn't. So D's having to babysit Tom Werman and stuff like that because Mark didn't want to have anything in the thing with him, or he didn't want Mark. So there you have that kind of stuff. So he kind of blames himself for not having that kind of time. At least that's what he says in the book. Now, again, say if do what you will with any of that. Again, you crafted some great songs, but if you're blaming the fact that you don't have that hunger anymore, I think that maybe here's my own, and maybe I'm preaching to myself with this one because I kind of feel like this way sometimes. If you don't, if this is the kind of stuff that you based your career on, but you don't have the inspiration or that hunger to write that, what's one of the things they always talk about? Find it within yourself and
Mm-hmm.
dig deep and pull it out. And this album just didn't sound like he he didn't dig deep at all. Again, love you, D. Please don't hate me for this, but that's just how I felt. He's like, I get the whole no inspiration, but dude, you kept saying live your dream, find your dreams. Okay, you achieved your dream, but still, you got to keep inspiring people. So there you go. That's my rant.
Very good.
So
No,
let me
I would agree with a lot. A lot. I
so
mean, we're obviously not in D's head, but yes, this is what you chose to do.
yeah,
You have to keep going.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and
So
the thing with this band, and what was sad was a lot of bands that I was talking about, they they are eventually able to get it back. Maybe not commercially, but critically. Where their diehard fans are like, this Latter Day album is still pretty good. Magica is pretty good. I mean, maybe nobody bought Magica from Dio, but a lot of people think highly of it. Y&T, the all three albums from the 90s. Yeah, like Musically Incorrect. This is very good. Okay, maybe it's not going to sell because that sound isn't in vogue anymore, but this is pretty good.
mhm.
They never recorded another Wasp. Thank you. Wasp. Perfect.
Yeah.
They did Inside the Electric Circus. that was felt rushed. Some good songs on it, but if you compare it with the first album, it sounded like, you know, Blackie wasn't inspired.
Yeah.
And then they come back with the Headless Children, and he found himself again.
Mm-hmm.
And then Crimson Idol, he built on that.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a rock opera, a great rock opera.
Yep.
If you're a heavy metal fan, most heavy metal fans love the Crimson Idol. Some people don't, but most of them do. And if they don't love Crimson Idol, they at least love Headless Children. But he found it with himself as the main songwriter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We only got one more studio album of original material after this one. And
Yeah.
Dee went on to do Widowmaker and solo projects and movies and things like that. But yeah, it was like we never saw the second act.
Yep.
Or heard the second act.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a shame. But
Yes.
I think there's not a whole lot of touring that they did with this album.
I got 47 dates.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
In 47 dates, 22 in the United States, 25 in Europe. Broome County Veterans Memorial Arena, Binghamton, New York. These U.S. dates, they were supported by Docket. Under Lock and Key was the album they were supporting at this point. Now, that album was glossier. That might have been a record company decision. The songs were still there.
Yeah.
I'm more of a tooth and nail guy myself. But you can't deny Unchained the Night.
Oh, Unchained the Night's awesome. It's not
and
love.
The Hunter.
It's Not Love for me was a great track.
It's Not Love, Till the Living End, Lightning Strikes Again. They were able to keep their momentum going. They played Rochester Community War Memorial, Rochester, New York, Glens Falls Civic Center, Glens Falls, New York, Capitol Center, Landover, Maryland, Fox Theater, Detroit, Michigan, Kemper Arena, Kansas City, Missouri, The Summit, Houston, Texas. And their last U.S. date was San Diego Sports Arena in San Diego, California. They go to England. Well, then they go to Europe. And they played the Grammont Theater in Ipswich, England. On this tour, the shows they did in England, they were supported by a band called Shy.
Oh, okay.
Shy were opening for them in England. And then the rest of Europe, they had UFO, who were promoting the Misdemeanor album.
Okay.
It's an interesting album cover. I've never heard that album, but I know it's Paul Chapman. No, I'm sorry, Paul Chapman did not play on it. He didn't play on that. But we got Atomic Tommy M. Tommy McClendon played on it. But they played Scandinavium in Gothenburg, Sweden, Dramens Holland and Drammen, Norway, Falconer Sollen in Copenhagen, Denmark, Olympen in Lund, Sweden, Stadthal and Offenbach on Main, Germany. Then they went back to England with Shy as support, because Shy were a UK band. They played the Edinburgh Playhouse, I should say the UK, not England, in Edinburgh, Scotland. They played Jaap Anden Hall in Amsterdam, Netherlands. And they played the HM Festival in Bologna, Italy, also on the bill. Crying Steel, Vanadium, Scanners, and Motorhead. I'm thinking Motorhead probably headlined here too. They played Victoria Hall in Hanley, England, Royal Court Centre in Nottingham, England. Interestingly, the last show listed on Sirius, oh God, that was a big one. Setlist FM, not Sirius XM. They played Allentown Fairgrounds, July 1086, with Raven and Loudness as the openers.
Wow.
There's no set list listed, but that date is listed.
Interesting.
And as far as the songs played from Come Out and Play, they played the title track, leader of the pack. I believe in rock and roll. The fire still burns. You want what we got, and be cruel to your school. So there you go.
Wow. Yeah, I think Dee says the tour gets kind of truncated a little bit because I think one of those first New York shows, they only played about half full arena, and I think that was just becoming the case as the tour went along. And until they went overseas, I think they did a lot better. But
Mm-hmm.
The American dates were not doing well, and yeah, I think they actually cut the tour short. But yeah, but I think by the time that tour, because when was the first tour date for that?
January 8th of 86.
Yeah, see by this, and again, we'll go more into this when we kind of talk about the demise of Twisted Sister, I guess you could call it. But by this point, Dee's pretty much become he hasn't he becomes the poster boy for everything wrong, I guess you could say.
Wrong with
Uh
rock and roll.
Wrong with
Yeah.
rock and roll and I guess, with the Capitol Hill thing and a lot of and how that got taken out of sometimes out of context and different things like that. And yeah, I think that kind of alienated a lot of people. But that'll we're gonna save that for our special after Love is for Suckers episode. So that ought to be interesting. I haven't listened to that one in a while, so I'm like, oh boy. Whew. Anywho, so let's see. So you should be seeing the Contrarians with me with talking about Iron Maiden. I mentioned that last week. There's another one I did with the Contrarians that I think is coming out soon. I don't know when that one's coming out. I did a special, hey, let's just sit back and just chill out and have a fun time with Mike Lodano on Grab a Stack of Rock. We just kind of sat around for an hour and just yacked. The fun part was him saying he got this.
Bang! Say da
Say
da
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 da da da.
da.
Did you ever hear that whole album?
Not the whole thing, but I remember that song.
Yeah, yeah,
Is that the one where they did a cover of the Who's My Generation, right?
yeah,
Ugh.
yeah. Da,
Mm.
da, 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 my generation. Da, da, da. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll give it that. It is a very interesting version of it. I can't deny that,
I've heard it.
but it's
Mm.
definitely of its time. A lot of gated drums, a lot of
Correct.
electronics. It's there's not to go on a tangent here, but yeah, there were certain songs that stuck with me over the years, but most of the album I'm just like, ooh, ooh, forgot how pre mid to late 80s this album really was. Ooh, it's yeah. But anyway, so that's always fun. Again, John mentioned the Y&T book. Don't forget about the Kansas book here. Let it
Nice.
be your guide. Yes, you can get these on T Public. Just look under Tim's Vinyl Confessions. And he's got a bunch of different merch as well as Grab a Stack of Rock with all his shirts. You get a shirt of Johnny Metal. Why
Lego
anybody
Fied.
Lego-fied and of course Metal Roger, so we got all that stuff. But you get some great shirts. Everybody's got some good merch out there. If you just want something a little different that you just want to when people ask what is that? And you can tell them, it's like, well, maybe it
Exactly.
might turn somebody onto something. You just never
Yeah.
know. So for John the Music Nut, John Clauser, Johnny Metal, the Metal Dad, rock forever. Oh boy, love is for suckers. Let's hope we don't wake up too many sleeping giants with this one. We'll see you next week, all. Take care.